Souls-like. Now, this is a genre I personally like, but never really bothered diving much into because honestly, I'm just really goddamn intimidated. Games in this genre are evil. They will beat you into a pulp, spray acid into your eyes, knock your teeth out, and then they have the guts to urinate on your corpse for the meme. It is just straight up pain. And on top of that, they are also just really chunky as hell time sinks. How Long to Beat says that Dark Souls Remastered takes 30-ish hours to complete, which is just a straight up lie, alright? Playing this game for the first time will take about 70 to 80 hours to beat, and probably about 100 plus to fully complete. And this also counts for every other Souls-like title out there. They are big ass games. And I mean, sure, there are still a lot of games out there that have a lot more playtime than Souls-like, but none of those games bully you throughout your entire playthrough every second it gets the chance. I mean, in Demon Souls, it has a mechanic where once you die, you lose half of your health until you beat the next boss. Hearing that from someone that is new to Souls-like is just death. You just die on the spot when you hear that. The only big boy Souls-like I played and completed is Elden Ring, which I thought was amazing. But even after I was finished with that title, I felt like I was still looking for that starting off point, the game that would ease me into the genre. So when I heard that this indie developer consisting of only 11 people were making a Souls-like game where you play as a little hermit crab fighting giant lobsters, it sounded like the perfect starting off point, even though this is like not my first game because you know what you said, whatever, you get what I mean. Another Crab's Treasure. This is Agro Crab's second game. Their first game was a roguelike called Going Under, which I started playing in anticipation of the funny crab game, and I found out that it's really good, which made my excitement for the crab game go up even further. In another Crab's Treasure, you play as Krill, a small and harmless hermit crab that sleeps in a tide pool, and one day his beloved shell with a crusty, ugly bandage on it gets taken away by a shark on a stick because Krill hasn't paid his quote-unquote taxes yet. Yeah, he basically just gets robbed. LOL. You quickly plunge into the sea to try and get your shell back, and immediately you find out that almost everyone is infected from the trash that us people have dumped into the ocean, and all the creatures have started collecting and hoarding it, not knowing the consequences of what this will do to them in the future. So basically, the world you explore is littered with a bunch of crap, broken vending machines, spilling out soda cans, glass bottles you have to hop across. The streets are made out of receipts. Enemies use toothpicks and elastic bands as a bow and arrow. Cardboard boxes are used as houses, and on some of them you will find a QR code which, if you scan it, will redirect you to this video. This is how you make a good video game. This is probably the strongest aspect of the entire game in my opinion. It's a lot of fun to explore the world, to see how the wacky sea creatures use everyday crap like cocktail parasols, milkshake straws, and paint rollers to their advantage. It's a very creative take on a Souls-like world, which is usually medieval fantasy themed, which I'm personally not the biggest fan of. Even Krill, the little guy you play as, uses the trash around him to aid him by using it as shells, which you can kinda see as a shield. There are a total of 69 different shells, nice, and each one of them has their own upsides and downsides. They all have an X amount of durability, an X amount of defense, some allow you to roll like a maniac, some are too heavy to dodge with, and also every single one of them has an ability ranging from eating your shell to regain some health to using it as a cannon that shoots confetti. There is a pill bottle, coconut shell, coffee mug, red party cup, mason jar, F-key, tin can, Among Us imposter, Dark Souls helmet, you can use a decaying crab corpse, and even a scrub daddy, thank God. Just in time, need to scrub some filth off my screen. It's just overall really goofy and fun to see all the little sea creatures figure out how to use their trash-littered ocean for their own benefit. And there's a fun aspect about knowing things that the in-game characters don't. We know what a milk carton is used for, but in another crab's treasure, they cut holes in it to make little sheds. They use hair combs as gates. Pencils are tied together to create spiked barriers. It's a really fun and creative world to explore, and again, I think it's the strongest part of the game by far. But this is Souls-like. Beach, we clown in the streets, we step into white fog, see a big ass boss and get one shot in less than 20 seconds. It's all about beating the odds, seeing something that looks borderline impossible and then conquering it, jumping over that hurdle and being rewarded for it. And personally, I love myself a good old challenge. I think it's fun to push yourself to the absolute max, and I've done it so many times. But another crab's treasure, if I'm honest, it kind of pulls its punches in this area. It's a lot easier compared to other Souls-likes out there, especially near the end. You become so strong, you start to deal so much damage that you beat a lot of bosses on your second or even your first attempt. At times, this game just feels like a cakewalk, which I think is a shame because there are definitely a handful of fun, creative and challenging parts. There's a big isopod boss that bounces around on a pinball machine that I really enjoyed, a squid with a party popper that uses it as a gun, a samurai that uses chopsticks as a katana. There are good boss fights in this game. It's just a shame that a lot of them are over before you figured out what the hell is even going on. And also, a few of them are pretty goddamn buggy. Two of them especially really stick out to me. There is this cage boss called Consortium, which is a bunch of sea creatures crammed inside of a cage with tentacle arms poking out of it. And honestly, it is a really, really creative boss for sure, but it's also just completely broken. I kept clipping through the cage and getting killed when I just shouldn't. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And the other one that glitched was this punching mantis that I was actually struggling with for about 30 minutes or so. But then it glitched me through the ground. I died. For some reason, the mantis also glitched through the ground and died, even though he still had 50% health remaining. So I'm getting a cutscene for beating the boss, even though I didn't beat him, while the game says a watery grave. The achievements for beating the boss pops. I respawn on the other side of the map and it soft locks me without loading the ground. I love video games. There was also a blue pufferfish that crashed your game when you killed it. I think that's kind of funny. If you can look past the occasional bug, rough edges, and relatively lower difficulty though, there is a really, really good and fairly interesting game here. A genuine indie gem with a fun, creative world to explore, lots of abilities, upgrades, and shells to play with to create your own unique little build, a handful of nifty enemies/bosses, and a weirdly touching story. I didn't really talk about this, but going into this game, I thought it was going to be try and get the treasure, and then you get the treasure and it ends. But no, it goes out of its way to tell something a lot more interesting, which had me in a bit in awe when the credits finally rolled. It isn't your generic, corny, happy ending, which I was really surprised by. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it's good. I really liked it. If you've ever been interested in Souls-like games, but also been too intimidated to jump into it like me, play another Crab's Treasure. This is the perfect starting off point. An aggro crab knocked it out of the goddamn park. They nailed it. Big fat thumbs up to the peeps that made this game. It's fantastic. I love it. But if you're still struggling to beat anything, you can also just equip a gun and shoot everything on your path. Yeah, that's the video. Subscribe and goodbye.